Just One Thing is a podcast with both feet firmly placed in the world of events and the creative industries, presented by me, Mel Noakes.
And me, Max Fellows.
It's a podcast from Elevate, where industry trailblazers write a letter to their younger selves.
And consider what wise words of advice they would give themselves now, if only they could.
Our discussion is all based on this letter. Be prepared for refreshingly honest conversations and words of wisdom. Our guest on this episode is Nic Neal, who is a freelance people and culture strategy consultant, but until very recently was the head of people and operations at the brand experience agency Our Live, which is where she'd worked for over 15 years. That is quite a jump for a self-confessed control freak that likes to play it safe.
She's built her career on her innate people skills, starting as an intern while at uni and worked her way up to the business as it grew from just 3 people to over 55. She found her flow in the people space, falling in love with thinking and about how people work and behave.
Nic says clarity always comes from engagement, not thought. You just need to dive in, take chances, and go and grab what the world has to offer. Welcome to our sofa, Nic.
That's a bit strange, listening to somebody talk about you and your whole life flashing before your eyes. Thank you.
Get prepared. The next 45 minutes is going to be very much about that. So, yeah, welcome to the podcast and the Elevate sofa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a nice operation in here. I'm very impressed.
Thanks. We've
legit,
done events before.
Yeah,
very impressed.
Done this before.
So for those that don't know you, Nic, tell us a little bit about yourself and about your background.
So I am now a people and culture strategy consultant, but that title is relatively new. It's months old. My career was really spent at one kind of key agency, which was Our Live brand experience agency based in Liverpool, which is where I live. And I started there as an intern, fresh out of the box, and just basically worked my way up. And if you'd asked me even 12 months ago, where would I be in 10 years' time? I probably would have said there, to be honest. So yeah, this new role is a really exciting new venture for me. And yeah, really keen to see what it has to offer.
And it's a really exciting time to get you on the sofa, because I think for so many people at their careers, especially when you've been at one brand for a long time or one place for a long time, that pivotal moment where you make that decision to go, you know what, I'm going to try something new, whether that's starting your own journey or going to a different company. That point at which you go, oh, it's time to change, is a really interesting point. So we're delighted to have you on the sofa now, so we can share some of those secrets and tips and explore some of that journey with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm keen to ask, how would your friends describe you?
They would probably say that I am a people person, funnily enough.
Shocker.
Surprise, surprise. I think people would say I was confident. And I think that's always
This
really...
is not people. How would your friends describe you?
My friends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get a little bit deeper then. I would say they think I am their therapist. I'm often the person that they come to for advice, the life advice, the serious advice. I'm busy a lot of the time is how they describe me. But yeah, a people, warm, kind-hearted person that likes reruns of Friends is probably what they would call me.
No one's going to hold you to that. It's fine.
I will have you off with any Friends quiz any
Really?
day of the week.
Good to know. If there's that Friends section, you're up.
I've got you.
And why, in terms of that life advice, the counsellor of and things like that, why have you taken that role within the friendship group?
I think because
How have you, should we say?
Yeah, I think I'm the big sister. I am the oldest in my family, and I've got quite a blended family in that I've got one sister, a half brother. Even though we don't do titles, it's all kind of brothers and sisters. And I think I've always just played that older sibling kind of role. I've always wanted to protect people. I've always wanted to be the sensible one. I've always wanted to give good advice. I've wanted people to be able to rely on me, to depend on me. That's always been quite important. I've wanted to create stability for other people. I've wanted to create an environment where they feel, comfortable and secure. So, I tend to be the person that gives mortgage advice and, advice on boyfriends that I don't think hit the mark and things like that.
Where does that want and need to provide stability for others come from?
Yeah, I mean, my parents got together when they were really, really young. They got married very quickly. They had me, I think my mum must have been 19 when she had me. So really, really young. And I don't have a memory of them together. They divorced really, really quickly. It's actually quite sad to think that you don't have a memory of your parents kind of like happily together. But their divorce and their relationship, whilst kind of really fighting over me and my sister, was difficult. It was full of a lot of conflict. They were two very oppositional people, and neither were necessarily wrong in how they felt. It just was expressed in wildly different ways. So I found myself kind of being in the middle on that spectrum and really trying to find the harmony and trying to protect my little sister, because I didn't want her to see so much conflict and so much arguing. And there really was quite a lot of resentment between my mum and dad, and to a certain degree. I think there still is. And you just want to, you adapt, don't you, as a child? You kind of reach your adaptive child state and want to protect and want to make sure everything's okay. And I think that's really the role that I tried to play. And bearing in mind at this point, I'm probably like 5 maximum.
Wow.
So it's quite young when this is happening. And my parents kind of did go through the court route, which meant that me and my sister were pulled into welfare officer meetings, and there was a lot of arguments about who we would live with. And that probably made growing up feel not that safe at times. And yeah, we ended up, I was born in Cardiff, which is actually where all of my family are from. And I'm really proud to be from Wales, but my mum kind of moved us to Liverpool quite quickly. She met someone else and remarried, which really separated us from my dad, which upset him really, really greatly. And so, yeah, just being caught in that really kind of like conflict-ridden environment, I think made me crave that sense of security and just wanting to keep everything kind of like really steady and stable. And as a result, my sister always came to me for advice. And yeah, we kind of like really stayed together as a little twosome for quite some time.
You get that real sense of connection, I guess, through the letter and the way that you write in your story of helping bridge gaps, bring people together, find ways to bring out the best in people. So to think like from such a young age to have learnt that skill, how else has that played out in your life? What other things have you seen that bear fruit in?
Well, interestingly, I did, every now and again, you do one of these psychometric tests because you need a piece of paper to tell you who you are.
Yes.
You can't figure it out
Are we
by yourself.
talking kind of your yellow, red cross?
This was the Gallup test. So it's all about your strengths.
Yeah.
And all of the strengths that would come to the table would be restorative, harmonizer, collaborator, bringing people together. So that was very much kind of what I was all about. But then I guess after we kind of moved to Liverpool, which was quite scary, moving to a completely different city with a load of people that have got this really harsh, different accent, using words that you don't understand. I've now just about
I wasn't going to say that.
Just about got the lingo. I've been embraced into the Scouse culture now. I was really fortunate actually because I had a fantastic school experience then. Like I sat in the middle in that I was clever enough to get good grades, but I wasn't like a real nerdy geek. I was good enough to be in the play, but I wasn't the main part. I was good enough to be in the sports teams, but I was never the captain. It was just always, I was never the best at anything. I was always just kind of in the middle, which was great because I didn't get in trouble with my parents. I had a really good kind of like school environment. And I think I really found a love then for performing and singing and being on the stage. I think a lot of people in this industry really find their feet with performance. Like,
have
why
you
do
heard
we?
several of them, right?
It's been a really interesting thread through it, actually. But also, I think, you know, as parents, as we all are now, and you're trying to think about opportunities for your kids to go and learn things and life skills and all of that. Actually, performing arts is one of the things that I am now thinking from public speaking and connecting with people and empathy.
Exactly.
And you learn so much, so it's not really surprised to see so many people in our industry. But it's been a really interesting thread through, hasn't it?
4 people, then me, the 5th in terms of on the counts that have had that performing arts type, theatre, drama.
Yeah.
Please tell me there's video evidence somewhere if you're in a girl band or on play, because We need those in the show notes.
Vibes, and I'm not going to lie. Could you see that?
Totally.
There are videos. My husband hasn't even been able to see these videos yet, and he is desperate. And I won't do it. So no, you're not going to get to see any video evidence. Sadly, couple of wines in, you might get me on a karaoke, and that's about as far as it will go. But yeah, I did really find my feet with performance, and I loved singing. Was more it for me than anything else. I really loved just singing on the stage, singing for an audience. Like I really loved being in front of an audience, and I do think it's helped me be a better presenter on stage now. Interestingly, when I get a CV and I've sat in, 1,000 interviews, if I see that somebody has got a performing arts background, it always pricks my ears up, and I'm really, really keen to hear more about their story, because I do think it really equips you quite well for this industry. And I really wasn't that bothered about going to uni. I was like so happy performing. I was in this band that I genuinely thought was going to be famous.
What was it called?
It was called Pure. Don't laugh. It was called Pure, and we performed at like Everton's football ground, and we were on telly and things like, so things were like happening. But sadly, the dream died quite quickly. And whilst I wasn't that bothered about going to uni, one day I did genuinely think I was going to have a career just doing the pubs and clubs. I thought there was brilliant money to be made in it, and thought, screw it, let's just go and, circle the clubs. A friend of mine in school went to a university open day, and used to be able to not go to school on the days that you went to a university open day. So I was like, I'll tag along. That sounds great. And she was going to the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts, which is called LIPA for short. It's the school that Paul McCartney started for the arts. It's quite a prestigious school. It's very small. The classes are really, really small, but a really, really prestigious school. And she said, do you want to come along to this open day and see what it's about? And the course that she was interested in was arts, music and entertainment management. And all of a sudden I was like, you know what, actually, I really love performance, but this could be a really good opportunity to combine this love of performance with something that felt a bit more serious and something that I probably should be doing at this point. So I went with her to the open day, and I fell in love. The facilities were amazing. There were so many kind of like wonderful stories. And because it had this connotation with Paul McCartney, loads of like famous actors and musicians would come and do seminars. And it just felt like a wonderful place to be. So I did apply, and they offered me an unconditional place, which, if you remember back in the days of uni, you had to get a certain number of points to go to certain universities. This one was like, no, we want you. We want you. We don't care what results you get. Like, we want you to come. And I felt really bad because the girl that I went with, she actually didn't get in, which made me feel really quite guilty. And I was so happy, and I needed to take this opportunity. But there was something in me going, Nick, this is 10 minutes down the road. It is a nice opportunity, but are you really playing it a bit safe here? Are you just kind of like sticking in your hometown, not really branching out, not really pushing yourself? And I kind of pushed past all of that and kind of like went to this amazing school, and it was really, really amazing. But I definitely didn't embrace uni life. I had a boyfriend at the time. We'd been together already for about a year. We lived together. I literally moved out of my house like really quite a young age, and part-time worked in a phone shop, and I was probably living actually the life of a 40-something. Mm-hmm. When actually I probably should have been out quad vods and all the other stuff that comes with this like freedom of student life. And I think I'd already just like packed myself into this, kind of like almost like 2.4 children type setup.
Is that a security thing, do you think? You mentioned in your letter the whole safety element and playing it safe and perhaps not going for it and things like that. And I wonder, with that relationship, flat, teenage, 18, 19?
18, yeah.
Is that a safety thing, do you think, from kind of perhaps younger years, that stability?
I really think it was. I think it just felt like, well, there's a good opportunity on the table. Take the one that's in front of you. Why would you go and put yourself out there for something that's unknown, something that you don't know about, when there's something good enough right here? So
do you think you could do better at the time?
You know what? From an education standpoint, it was probably the better choice. But from a social standpoint, and I don't mean social in going out, I mean making connections with different types of people from different backgrounds and things like that, kind of having a bit more independence and not maybe being in a relationship so young. That is the bit that I really wish that I would have had the opportunity to do. I wish I'd done a bit more travel. I wish I'd just kind of been brave enough then to just try and do something different. But like I say, just felt like the opportunity in front of me was the
But also there's
right
quite
one.
a serendipitous moment, and you talk to a lot of people across the board actually of those moments, sort of the sliding doors, I guess, analogy of just taking that chance of, oh, you know what, I'll join you for a crack and just sort of get out of school for a day, and lo and behold, you walk in somewhere and go, this is where I should be, this is brilliant, and you get an unconditional place. There are certain things that feel like they're there. So I can also understand, but it's really interesting at that point that you wrestled with yourself a little bit to almost challenge it. So it's almost like there's that thought in there that's going, is there something more, and should that go bigger? So what does that, because I guess there's lots of people that go through those moments in their career, like, and I'm sure you felt that at Owl where you're like, oh my God, is this the right time to jump, and should I do this? So what sort of stuff was going through your head at that point to help you make that decision to go, you know what, no, I'm going to stay and do this thing as opposed to go and explore?
Yeah, I think the confidence that I had in myself at that point was probably quite low. I was really good at being confident on a stage, but actually the voice inside was probably just a really quiet one. And I think it was a really easy voice to just squash and go, don't be stupid. This is a really good option. So why not just go for it? And I probably would have just continued life like that. I think what happened next to me was quite a difficult kind of fork in the road, in that I very unexpectedly fell pregnant, and nothing could have prepared me for that outcome at all. It was a time where I felt quite alone, and it wasn't actually that I was alone. I didn't talk to very many people about it. I talked to my mum, who, it's really odd, she knew. I asked her to, I was working in the phone shop one day, and that was the day that I found out, and I phoned my mum to come and pick me up, and I got in the car, and she just knew, and I don't know how she did, but I think that's something that it's a mum's instinct sometimes.
I was going to say, mums always know. So this to Albie all the time. I know everything.
That's it. And she said, look, you've got to make this decision, which, you've got to make this decision. But whatever you choose, I will support you. If that means me stopping everything to raise a child, that's what we'll do. If you want support because you want to make a different decision, then that's what we'll do. And I don't think I appreciated at the time. I think it was only writing the letter recently that I really appreciated how big a deal that piece of advice was, because she was really willing to put everything, to stop everything in order for me to have the kind of life that I wanted. And I think I've only just really connected with how meaningful that probably was. And I don't talk to many people about this. In fact, I could probably count on one hand the number of people that know, because I did eventually decide that I wasn't going to continue with the pregnancy, which is a really difficult decision for anybody to be faced with, no matter what their circumstances are. And, I sadly don't think that we talk about this enough. And I think we probably should normalize the conversation a little bit more so that the people that are going through it feel a little bit less alone. I didn't have a podcast to listen to. I didn't have even social media at this point. This was, I was 18 years of age, and I just basically saw my life flash before my eyes, and made a decision that I felt was right for me. But I think what it probably did is made me think, right, okay, well, if I'm going to have made such a big decision, I need to make something of my life and make sure that I feel like it was a decision that was the right one. And there's definitely been moments where it's been a bit haunting to think about it, but it was
the what ifs, right? It's and we were saying before, we share, and actually listening to and when reading your letter, things like that, we share loads of commonalities. I think more so than I actually thought or realised. And I completely agree. I think the whole premise of going through that, and actually at times it can happen accidentally, and actually there are a point, you mentioned fork in the road, where a decision needs to be made because it is life-changing and the impact is huge if you're going to take it kind of seriously. And I think in the same way, and obviously not like as a comparison, but miscarriages and things like that as well. And especially blokes. And so this is me kind of saying it from a bloke's perspective. Women go through it way harder, but it just doesn't get spoken about enough, and to a point where people can then feel like they can ask advice or share a story or share an experience and things. And so I hear you, and I'm glad that you're kind of sharing it now. So thank you.
Yeah.
How was the letter writing then as I was going to say an exercise. It's not really an exercise. It's kind of more than that, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did you find that as a process, let's call it, and an activity?
It definitely didn't feel like an activity. It felt a bit like, when you go up into the loft and you open up all the old boxes and you get all the old pictures and the old clothes that you used to wear, and it transports you back to this like place in time, and it's like you remember it like yesterday all of a sudden. It kind of felt like that. And in some ways there were like some gorgeous moments where I was like, that was great. And there were some other moments that I've got to be honest, they've like tingled on the surface for a few days. My poor husband is like, you're in a world of your own at the moment. And I think having the opportunity to write this letter has really brought a lot to the surface. And I think it's one of the reasons why I do feel comfortable talking about some of the more difficult moments, because sometimes it's nice to let it out and let it go. So thank you for the opportunity.
What were some of the tingly ones, and what were some of the ones that were you enjoyed something, those memories?
Yeah.
Don't have to go into them in depth, but just what were some of the kind of the thoughts?
You know what? Just like some of the amazing projects that I've had the opportunity of working on. Like I've been able to work with some incredible household brands. I remember kind of my journey with Owl kind of shifting from smaller companies that were not really particularly well known, and my dad kind of going, are you sure this is the career path for you? Like, what's going on? And then going, oh, Dad, Google or Adidas. And he's like, oh, you've got a serious job. And I'm like, yes, this is actually quite serious.
Honestly,
I still get asked to do the balloons everywhere we go.
Oh
my God. So there were some lovely moments like that. And actually just kind of thinking about how my journey with Owl kind of really started. I ended up just meeting Anthony, who is the owner of Owl, at like a neighbour's party. He said, oh, you like events. In fact, the reason why he said you like events is because I did get into uni thinking I would explore the music industry, and quickly pivoted. I got assigned to the graduation ball as like my kind of like project to look after. And so all of a sudden I was like looking after this like graduation ball thinking, oh yeah, I feel like this is like a really good path for me. And my neighbour, I told him about it. He said, I'll come to this party. There's somebody that I want you to meet. It's a guy that has an events agency. I think you get on really, really well. So me and Anthony talked all night. In fact, I remember my boyfriend at the time getting really, really jealous. There was definitely nothing in it. Getting really jealous. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to put my brave pants on. I'm going to call this guy tomorrow, and I'm going to ask him if I can work for him for free. Like you can't say no to somebody wanting to work for you for free. So I phone up and I'm like, hi, yeah, we met yesterday. I just thought maybe, can I maybe come work for you for free? He was like, no. I was like,
I can totally see Ant saying something like that as well.
No, thank you.
No.
It's like, oh, okay. I'd practice in the mirror.
No,
I'm trying to remember. I think it was just because it must have been there wasn't maybe enough work at the time or something like that. It felt like it was, there was definitely a reason for it. But I said, look, don't worry. If you change your mind, you know where I am. And cried a little. And then afterwards he phoned me back and said, no, go on, actually, that makes sense. Why didn't you come and join us? And I was like, okay, that's brilliant. And I was like, if I do well for the first 3 months, you think we can make it 6 months? And he said, yeah. So I ended up doing a 7-month placement.
For free?
It started off for free.
Tell me that 10 years wasn't free.
10 years wasn't free. I think at one point it worked its way up to £30 a week, but I didn't care. I would have paid him to work. And I think so many people in this industry you feel so passionate about it that you just want the experience. And so
but a lot of people can't. And I hear that, but it sounds quite romantic that you could afford to not work or earn for 6 months to go and explore this.
Well,
potential
no.
career.
Let me correct you. I just worked in the nighttime. So I would work in a bar and I would work in the day, and I'd work for Owl in the day. And that's just the way that you'd had to do it back then. I didn't have like financial support from family or anything like that. We just didn't really have a lot of money around us when we were growing up. So it's like, well, if you want to do this, you're gonna have to go work in a bar. So that's the way that I did it. And I was 3 people at the time. It was in a tiny broom cupboard on like a little road above a pharmacy. And I think what was great about it is that we had to do everything. Yeah. So I would chase the invoices, but I'd also deliver the event. And then you'd also have to go and like buy everything. And then you'd also have to I was cold calling at one point. God, don't ever want to do that again. But yeah, at one point I was like, hi, do you want an event? So we literally did everything. But whilst I'm kind of pleased to be out of that bit now, it actually is really, it does a lot for your grit and your determination and your work ethic, because you see the energy that has to go behind building these businesses. And yeah, we all kind of played a role there.
Yeah, and obviously what's brilliant, and I share some of that having joined Iris, although it was slightly later, but Iris experience, there were 4 of us tearing wristbands at like 2 o'clock in the morning and stuff like that. But like you say, there's something really amazing, and obviously still the MD there, and you've seen this business grow, like not just grow, but stellar, like straight line up over the course of that time. And to have been there at the beginning to see where it is now, that must have been quite a journey. And you talk a little bit in the letter about some of the client journeys that you've had and things like that. But tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I think it's definitely given me huge appreciation for the back of house operation that makes an agency work. And I think that's what has helped me in my people, in the people part of the role that I've done, because it's not just people processes for people's sake. It's to run a business and to think about how commercially a business is going to run. And I think that kind of like early experience really stood me in good stead to understand the P&L has got to balance. Like, you've got to really be mindful of your overheads. You've got to make sure that productivity is high. Like, all of these things that aren't really that sexy are necessary for businesses to survive. And I think I'm not sure I would have necessarily grasped that had I just gone into the people space in that kind of traditional way. I think it really did kind of help me understand that. And, I loved delivering events. I loved being hands-on with clients. I had some gorgeous clients that I just traveled the world with. And now I look back and think they were probably the heydays. Like, when you'd go on, we went on site visits to Abu Dhabi, which was the best bit. It wasn't the actual delivery of the event. It was like the piece before, when you're checking everything out and just making sure that all these, hotels and restaurants and experiences are brilliant. And it was like, this is amazing. I'm being paid to do this. So there were just some like gorgeous, gorgeous highlights. And I really did kind of like work my way up from intern to like assistant to manager. And then, within 5 years, I'd reached a point where I was head of operations, which still required quite a lot of frontline delivery. I was still working on some of the kind of juicier projects that we were delivering, but actually starting to be seen as a bit more of a senior role within the business. And, Ant and I had a really good relationship. There was always a lot of trust there. And it was nice to kind of feel that we started to grow this business together. I mean, his name has always been like over the door, but I feel like sometimes I've wanted to wrestle him for it, because I feel like I've put just as much effort and energy into it at times. And that's something that we laugh about a lot. So, I did kind of really enjoy those years, and reaching that kind of like head of operations point really started to shift when I took on one project that probably is the project that maybe slightly broke me. It was, say, like 2013, and we were working with a really, really big brand on a really, really big launch, but there wasn't very much time to kind of get this project delivered. It was the biggest pitch we'd ever done. In fact, I remember that in the pitch doc, I mean, there's always a cock up somewhere, isn't there? In the pitch doc, there was on the Meet the Team page where it listed all of the different roles of all the different team members. There'd been a misprint and my name was next to each role. So when we got in to do the actual pitch, I was like, oh, hi, I'm Nic Neal. And they were like, oh, you're Nic Neal. You're next to every photo and described next to every single role. And weirdly enough, that's kind of what ended up happening because the project snowballed at a ridiculous pace. We probably didn't know the brand as well as we would have liked to have known them with that much time to deliver. You wanted to be able to make instinctive choices for them and you couldn't because you were still getting to know them, but they needed things fast and they had a lot of pressure from their kind of senior teams to get things had to be perfect. It was a very perfectionist like a perfectionist way of working. And the client was starting to get a little bit snippy. I was like starting to work a ridiculous number of hours and it was getting to the point where the team wasn't that big and I was under so much pressure to get everything right that I couldn't get help either because the time it would have taken to brief a team in and to get somebody to actually help would have taken more time than to actually do the job itself. I found myself like working all through the night because it was the only time the client wouldn't email me. And that was like my period of peace.
Your window.
Yeah. And it was quite suffocating. And it's to a certain degree kind of like made me fall out of love with events a little bit at the time, which is actually really sad to think about now that I think about it. But it probably did. It probably did make me fall out of love. And God, like there was so much pressure. Everything was going wrong. The rehearsal day was a mess. It was a car crash. It was an absolute car crash. And then it's almost like 1 minute past midnight on show day, everything clicked into place. And until now, there wasn't one hitch. It was the most beautiful event I've ever produced. It was huge. It was, multi-million-pound project. It was stunningly beautiful. And the client didn't even say thank you after it. And I was just like, I feel like I've lost years. And all you want is a thank you. And that kind of made me feel a bit like, you know what, I need a bit of a break from being on this front line. And that was when that kind of head of operations role at OWL kind of really started to kick in a little bit more. And I think my intention was to go back to still delivering kind of big projects, but actually I really started to fall in love with this more back of house kind of operation, supporting the people delivering projects, helping them make sure they are resourced properly. Like I wanted to be the support that I didn't feel like I was able to have when I was delivering that project. I remember saying to Anthony at the time, I want to go and work in a factory. I want to go work in a factory because I want to do something so mundane and so kind of monotonous because I can't stretch my brain any further. So actually to be in this head of operations role, supporting the team, felt like things were starting to click into place a lot more, which was
some
really
of the things we've talked about with other guests is that sense of not earning your stripes. I don't think that's the right way to describe it, but understanding the events world and playing different roles and doing the do's that you understand. Because when you take on some of those bigger roles or side roles or support roles, or, you go into consultancy or you run your own business, understanding the world that we are in properly allows you to be even better at what you do. You almost can't shortcut that.
Yeah. And I think that particularly to be a good leader, you need to have good empathy. And that's exactly what you're talking about. It's being able to say, I've walked a mile in your shoes. I know exactly how you're feeling right now. I get it. I think kind of like goes a real long way. And that's definitely the role that I wanted to start to play for the team at OWL.
Do you think you were always destined for that role, given what we said earlier about this mothering type within your friendship group, but then equally with protection of your sister, and then in terms of how things have led through and obviously the kind of path that you've taken?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've never actually thought about it like that, but I think you're absolutely right. I've definitely wanted to be that person that would protect the team. In fact, I remember being on my first maternity leave and I met up with a load of the girls from the office and was just checking in to see how things were going. And they said, we miss you. We feel like we need you and we want to be looked after by you. And it actually made me end up cutting my maternity leave a bit shorter than I intended, because I just felt like that was a place that was really, really needed. So yeah, I think there is a bit of that going on in there.
So if you take then that career, and on paper you have, and we were talking before, I think it was Costa, where there's the Prince William, I think it was, met him or a Starbucks and things, and you've got this 27 roles within a single organisation, from there up to CEO type level in Starbucks or what have you. And over a 20-something year career. You've obviously had a shorter one in that respect, but still gone through the kind of ranks, if you will, within the organisation. Briefly tell us then about obviously kind of climbing then to the more senior roles. And you were saying in the letter, and obviously in our conversation as well, there have been opportunities to follow what would be typically that next sensible move.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that, briefly about what that move is, but then equally how things have unfolded or how it then unfolded.
Yeah. So, from that kind of like head of operations role to, and then probably around 2020, kind of like the pandemic years, like things kind of shifted out a little bit. Obviously things shifted a lot for everybody during the pandemic years, but around kind of 2021, Anthony had decided that he was going to take a step back from a kind of hands-on MD role. And it was around this time that I was starting to think, okay, Nic, what's next? You've got to start thinking about what it is that you want from your career. Is it kind of working on more project related stuff? So really helping the teams on making sure projects were profitable and they were resourced well and they had good suppliers and doing all of that nice department lead stuff. Is it something that feels a bit more kind of like people centric? Or he asked me if I'd wanted to go for the MD role. And I thought about it for probably 34 seconds. And I don't know, I just really, really quickly knew that wasn't a route that I wanted to take. And a couple of people spoke to me about it. In fact, the Lauren Mucklow, who went on to become the MD, who was brilliant, she did say, mate, are you mad? Do you not want to go for this? Because the two main people in the running were two people from inside the agency already, Lauren and Muriel. And she was like, are you sure you don't want to go for this? And I was just really, really sure that actually I felt like I knew enough around how to run a business that this was going to become more about P&L than it was going to be about the thing that I really valued most, which was the people, the connections, and really kind of being in that type of position. So yeah, I quickly turned that down, which was actually a wonderful career opportunity for me because it meant that I could facilitate the MD appointment kind of like process as well. So it was lovely to be in a position to interview and kind of like really do like a strong MD assessment kind of process. And it was the point where I thought, you know what, maybe the people route is for me. And it was only really from having a mentor at the time. And she wasn't necessarily an official mentor, but a lady called Amanda Vine, who was consulting generally for the business at the time. We were having quite a lot of one-to-ones, and I don't know, every now and again, you just feel like you really connect with somebody and you feel like you can open up to them. You feel really psychologically safe with them. And Amanda was that for me. She held space for me. So simple, but just let me be who I was. And she reflected some of what she thought were my strengths back to me. And all of a sudden, this idea of a more formal people route kind of started to take a little bit more shape. Now, usually people in the people space have kind of gone down a more traditional HR route. Yeah. And you'll go and do your kind of like CIPD level 3 and then level 5, and you work your way up quite kind of systematically. And I was like, I can't do a people route formally. Like I'd need to study. I'd need to go back and do this. And she's like, I
need the certificate on the wall that says I can.
Yeah. Absolutely. And she was like, you can do it. She's like, you can do it. I know lots of people that are doing it with the same kind of experience as you. Like, you need to get out of your own way and really think about it. And I don't know, I think that was my first mentor experience and was absolutely transformational. So I did sign myself up for a CIPD, which is Chartered Institute of Personal Development, qualification at the highest level. So like, you've got the experience. That means that you can fast track your way across level 3 and level 5, which was nice. And I said to Anthony, I want to be the head of people for this business. And he was super supportive and said, okay, great. It meant that I got to work with Lauren and Muriel, who were appointed to be joint managing partners of the business. And we were a female force to be reckoned with. And that probably is one of my career highlights, is working in a truly collaborative, safe, but kind of positively challenging environment. And we were navigating an agency during what has been the most crazy couple of years for our industry. And it was amazing. And the people responded so well and everything just felt like it.
And I really wanted to ask you about this because you didn't just navigate it. You were award-winning with a massively engaged team running a completely virtual operation, which are largely kept, right, after the pandemic as well, where lots of agencies were bringing people back in.
Yeah.
So I'd love to ask you a little bit about that, because actually building successful teams, yes, you were the head of a team, a whole business, but actually just any leader, any manager trying to build a successful team. What are some of the things you learned through that period that you could share?
So I think what was really fortunate is like the world all of a sudden was kind of waking up to the fact that we are going to have to change the way that we work in order to get the best out of people. And this was good for me because it felt like a mindset that I already had. And Al wasn't a very award hungry kind of agency. It's just not something that they've ever really wanted to do. And I was like, no, I want one. I want one, and I want it to be for people. And I promised myself I would never go for something unless I felt like we could deliver on it. And, this is the point where we were recruiting like crazy, as were a lot of other agencies as well. I wanted to create a compelling point of difference. So I wanted to be able to sit on that call and say, this is why you should come and work for us, and be able to deliver on it. Like being able to authentically deliver on the employer brand messages that you were giving really meant a lot to me. I upped all of the kind of listening strategies throughout the business. You do not build a good people strategy unless you listen to the people that are in it. And I just really tried to switch my ears on and make sure that we were finding ways for people to communicate what was working for them and what wasn't working for them, and build a program around that. So and when I say we, I kind of worked with an amazing person in my team called Sarah. She's our kind of people and culture manager. And we developed a really good recruitment process. We delivered, we overhauled our rewards and benefits, and we tried to make them as progressive as possible and not stick to the standard stuff that you get every single day. We tried to be really generous with people that were going to be leaving the business to start families and things like that. And I wanted to also for us to get a reputation for being the kind of business that didn't just measure retention as its success measure. I find retention just like a really funny thing, because it is a sign of people wanting to stay in your business. But I cared about being an employer that was also okay to see you go if that was going to be the right option for you. Like businesses that really try to hold their people against their will, kind of, I don't know, it just irks me slightly. And I think kind of that reputation started to ripple throughout the industry. And then people started to really come to the agency because they knew that we cared about people. And we weren't caring about people just because it made sense for the business. It's because it made sense for them as well. And it got to the point where I said, guys, I think we're ready to go for an award. And, carefully chose campaign. I've got a best places to work kind of list. And the reason why I chose that is because it did a questionnaire, with me. And I had to tell them about all the different things that we would do, but it also did one with the people. And that's what actually mattered to me, is that people would be verifying that if I'm saying that I think we've got a good this, that, and the other, that we actually have. And we got on the list, and we featured really high on the list, given it was our first time around. So kind of like top 30 agency, which just felt like a cherry on top of all of the hard work and all of the hard energy. And it was, for me personally, it was a piece of validation. It was, okay, you kind of went off on this route and you didn't necessarily have all of the credentials for it. You did it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, so with that and that highs that you've then found and secured, and that validation and things, take us then to the point of deciding actually it's not for you anymore. And I know there's quite a blunt right turn here, but I think for those listening as well, is this sounds again almost fairy tale building and growing and things, but the reality is then there's a big change that happens, and happens to you obviously recently, where you've then become self-employed and things like that. Why and how's that been? What's the lessons and learnings? But why first?
Well, to be honest, it was that award. That award
completed
for me.
It now. I'm done.
Completed it. Our live completed it. It was, as soon as you kind of like win something like that, which was a personal goal for me. I'm not saying that it's like the benchmark that anybody else should necessarily be measuring themselves against, but for me, it was the thing that I wanted to achieve and had done it. And I got really quiet with myself and said to myself, what do you want next out of this? And I knew that the likelihood was I'd just be doing the same thing again. I might be doing it slightly differently and maybe in a slightly different market, but was going to be doing the same thing again. And this probably happened at a similar time, really, to my relationship with Elevate, funnily enough, kind of really starting to build. So I think I've said before, I think Elevate has opened ridiculous doors for me in terms of access to a community of people that genuinely want good things for you. And you haven't paid me to say that. That is genuinely how I feel. And I think, there were loads of people in there. Zoe Tufts is one of them from Times 10. Emma Castle from Castle Bell. Loads of these people around me are just giving me loads of confidence in myself. And it just, something clicked. And I can't put it down to a big moment, but something clicked where I thought, I think I need to do something different. And I need to think about what moving away from this role and this business looks like. And honestly, one day I just handed my notice in. It wasn't a big sit down and think and plan and write out what I'm going to say. I just went into Anthony one day and said, I think I need to call it a day with the words.
What a difference from, to be in a business for 10 years to get to that point and to just have that moment compared to all those years before where you're trying to make that decision and you almost didn't have the confidence and the things there to maybe push yourself out of those comfort zones and go. But for a lot of people, taking that leap is a big old leap. And for you, it was a little calling that got louder that you just was, that's it. I'm going to go in one day and this is it.
That's it. And I knew that I had to go in there. And in fact, I said to myself, I need a sign that this is okay. And I put on LinkedIn. And this was about like an hour before I went into Anthony. And I went on LinkedIn and I saw, I think it might have been like a Jay Shetty video or something. And he was looking straight into the camera. It's like he was looking into my soul. And he just said, do it. You are going to think to yourself, why didn't I do this sooner? And I've got no idea what he was talking about. But I was like, okay, I'll go do that then. So influenced. There was a compelling argument for me to stay. And I just felt really resolute. I don't know. It's like it was something physical or visceral that told me I had to just do something for me. And my family, my husband was like, what the bloody hell are you doing? Like, this sounds mental. Like, we're comfortable. We are safe. Like, this is great. It's enjoyable. It's not like I didn't enjoy my job.
Though, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was it. I was like, if I don't do it now, in fact, I said to myself, if my daughter, who's 5 right now, she's a feisty little character, if she came up to me and said, Mum, what should I do in this situation? I'd want to be able to say, be brave and take the leap. And I can't do that if I'm not willing to do it myself. And that was the point for me.
And how's that leap gone? So for anyone that is looking to start a business, venture onto their own as a freelancer, become self-employed, as someone who is box fresh, of literally several months, into it and things, and already successful in terms of the work that you're delivering and the business that you've won and picked up. Just some of the key lessons, or maybe some of the challenges you found and that you wish you'd maybe known a bit more about, but equally what some of the kind of the nitbits and nuggets, the highs and the lows, I think is important to share.
Yeah, I think from a highs perspective, I tried to speak to as many people who were new or in a similar space. People that were consultants or freelance or just in control of their own kind of income and the projects that they worked on. And not one person told me, don't do it. This is really dangerous. This is really silly. And actually, loads of people said, guess what? If it doesn't work, you can just go and get another job. And I was like, yep, that's very, very true. So that's what kind of like helped me build a little bit of confidence. I mean, I'm a few months in. This is brand new for me. And I'm trying to be really awake to the reality of working for yourself. I'm learning a lot about my own productivity. Like, it's not necessarily the same every single day. Like, I'm probably working more at the moment, but I've got to, right? Because it's all on me now, and there's a big lot of pressure on me. It makes me think differently about taking long holidays all of a sudden, which I've previously very much liked to do. But I think they're challenges that are they're fun challenges to get into. And it's just been a necessary move for me to feel alive again and feel like I can add value and feel like I can make a bigger difference by working with lots of different companies and soaking up all those experiences. There will be bad days, I'm sure, and it will be difficult. And I might decide that actually I am an indoor cat and I like to know when my belly's going to get stroked and I want a full-time job again. But for now, I think it's time to be brave and embrace the challenge and take it for all it's worth.
And what skills or, I guess, tools or whatever in your toolbox have been the most valuable as you've entered into this new
You've become
era?
the outside cat, not the indoor cat.
I know, it rains sometimes.
I love the cat analogy, by the way. Nic mentioned it earlier and I was like, that is so relevant in terms of this indoor cat versus an outdoor cat.
Yeah, I think my husband's always been an outdoor cat and he started his business only 2 years ago. So I've been really, really fortunate to have a front row seat to his journey working for himself from going from a full-time role. So that has definitely helped. I think the power of networking and the community and the people that you know is one that I've had to really draw on. Trying to speak to as many people as possible has really, really helped. I think, fortunately, don't tell him. I think I'm quite good at this. I think I am, and now actually speaking to other people.
Okay.
I know. So I can't say it out loud. And speaking to new clients and new contacts, I'm like, I know what I'm talking about. And actually now I've got nearly 20 years experience. That's revealing my age. And so I've got stuff to draw on and yeah, I'm going to try and make it work.
Is there anything you wish someone had told you before you went to do it that you didn't know already? That you're like, oh, I wish someone would have said that to me or let me know that was going to be a thing. Like you say, like working more hours, not taking long holidays. Is there anything else?
And not relating to VAT money or other ways and loopholes. Right?
Oh God, that is a new minefield that I didn't quite prepare myself for, to be honest. No, you know what? I think I've gone into this with my eyes open actually. And that's just credit to the people that are around me and asking good questions. So that's been incredibly helpful. I think the biggest thing I've struggled with is just being brave and doing it. But sometimes you've just got to walk in there and do it. So,
and I mean, that kind of perfectly then encapsulates the conversation. And we're talking about the piece of advice. And obviously this session and the letter to your younger self is very much around, if that one piece of advice, good or bad, so good that you then have to share it, what would that be?
It would be brave and back yourself. And, clarity comes from engagement, not thought. I absolutely love that quote because we can overthink. We can think things through and plan things out. And actually, sometimes you just got to go and do the damn thing and then figure it out afterwards. And I think that has given me more clarity and more comfort that, okay, if it doesn't work out, you will always find something else. And so
repeat that one again, clarity.
Clarity comes from engagement, not thought. So go and do it. Don't just think about it.
Do like a list though of all the pros and cons and what could happen and spending a good couple of hours on it.
You're ruining the moment here.
No.
It's a lovely summer moment.
No, but I think it's brilliant because it plays out so much in your journey, those moments where you just go, yeah, I'm just going to go do it.
I know. And you know what? I also love a list. This is the one thing I've never written a list or a list of pros and cons on, ever. Maybe I'm mad. Who knows? But I don't know, sometimes your gut instinct is just there and you think it's the right thing to do.
Well, brilliant. Look, thank you so much for sharing, being open and honest on the sofa and the journey as well, because I think it's really insightful and obviously the shift and more recent change as well as what's driven it. So, yeah, appreciate it and thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
What
a lovely experience talking to you guys.
How did you find that one?
Obviously we know Nic really well. One of our partners and Nic has been on the board for a couple of years now. And I love that you still discover stuff about people that you didn't know. And I think Nic, the thing we know about Nic anyway, is that she's really brave. She's really passionate. She cares so much about people. But to see where some of that stuff has come from and to watch her sort of go through this process, both as a friend and close up, But to hear her talk about some of those big decisions, and so many of us are going to have those big decisions in our life where you're like, well, this is good and I'm comfortable and everything's great, but I feel this call to do something else. It's brilliant to sort of have a chance to speak to somebody going through that. And I think she was super brave sharing her journey, the story of her pregnancy, and just this part of her life and the sort of exciting beginnings of something new.
I think in kind of almost retrospect of that is this underlying kind of need, because of the personal upbringing she had, is to find and seek safety, which I think a lot of us perhaps can lean on the air of and on the side of, and we hear a lot of guests talk about this, put yourself out there and things like that, and actually it's really hard to do. The way that Nic explained it, I thought was fascinating, especially from that perspective. At that moment in time, there is a moment in time where actually, no, this is the time for me to do it, and taking that leap. And then obviously that journey that she's then continued to a point, then actually what's probably the most brave thing is then taking a complete right turn at a point where you're probably progressing to an MD or you're offered the opportunity to. You think, actually, no, that's not for me. And actually instead I'm going to go and venture out onto my own, which to the probably advice of everyone else saying, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. Actually, something has said it, and you and her had the conversation about being list lovers. It's the one thing she's never written a list about, which I find actually quite interesting, because that gut has obviously said something loud enough, and without kind of being biased, the help or the space provided by a mentor or community, like an Elevate, to help her realise that.
But I think there's something really beautiful about defining your own version of success, and I think
that's nice,
you get to a point in your career where you've done so much, and I think you do, and I've had this a lot where people, I spoke at an event not that long ago where people are like, well, you're head of, and where do you go next? And I think what's lovely about Nic's journey is, and that story, and I hope people will take it from it, there's always another next. There's always an opportunity, but sometimes you have to think laterally, and more titles and bigger jobs and aren't necessarily the thing. You get to a point where you go, well, actually, what do I want, and where do I add value, and what's exciting for me? And because it gets to a point where it's not about the titles.
Yeah. It's more, isn't it? It's about what's fulfilling, what's rich and things like that. And actually Nic was saying prior to as well is that there's probably 2 more big shifts or changes, and that's,
Yeah, you don't just stop.
I was going to say how old Nic is, but there's a certain kind of big number coming up, might have a 4 in it. And actually,
she might kill you for that.
She might, but I'll take that. But she was saying that there is still time for a mistake or 2 or a change or 2, and that's okay. And I think that's something that's really really empowering. And we were also talking, and when Nic had said, is that I had always operated trying to be 10 years older in order to earn a space in a room and a conversation. And while she hadn't felt that was the same with her, but she did definitely feel that there's a certain level and age where it feels like your confidence aligns along with your purpose aligns and your passions align. And that's this moment for her where she's like, so that's me then. This is now the course. And it seemed like that is that moment. And I found it interesting. To your point is that, it's okay. And that's it. So a lovely conversation. I thought that everyone, should meet Nic. She's a good egg, isn't she?
She is a good egg. And I think we can't let this end without sort of touching on, the bravery to share some of those really personal stories and moments. Because I think for so many people, and, I'm sure some of the listeners that we have as well, you'll have those points in your life where you're at a really difficult crossroads and you have to make some difficult decisions, and you go, well, what's life after this, and what will happen, and where does it go? And just some of the stories that can come afterwards, there is the next point, there is the story afterwards, and there is the thing. And I think Nic was super brave to share some of that in the hope that people listening might find some comfort and find some way. So one of the things we'll do in the show notes is perhaps put some links to some of those sort of organisations and places that people can go if they're finding that they're in a similar position or have people in similar positions that need some support, because it's right, we need to normalise some of these conversations. So a brilliant chat, super insightful, and just lovely to have someone we know so well, but where I feel like I've learnt just as much, if not more, about her than I thought I would. But so great to have someone we know so well on the sofa with us, where we've learnt probably as much as our audience and listeners will. So yeah, another great story.
Indeed. Elevate operates thanks to the generosity of our partners and supporters. See the show notes to find out more about them.
Together, we're changing lives, careers, and the events industry for the better. Our producer is Peter Kerwood, and our sound and mix engineer is Matteo Magariello.